Hello, and welcome to this week's character building. Today's subject is morphology, and we're going to discuss what it is, why it's important, and how to use it. So let's begin. What is morphology? What is the dictionary definition? And that is the form and structure of an organism considered as a whole. The whole picture. How do you tell, just by silhouette, for example, a rabbit from a horse, from a pig, from a cat, from a human being? And we're going to go over those differences today. So this is like the top of the hierarchy. We're going to look at the torso specifically, as it's the biggest part of most figures, right? So if you're going to design a character, you know what the species is. For example, if it's a human being, it follows a certain general form. Same thing with the other animals. How do you make sure that your characters look like what they're supposed to look like? And so here we go. Let's see. I also apologize if the palettes are a little bit in the way today. I'm still getting used to the format, so please forgive me. All right, so we have two basic rhythms that the creatures fall into. There's the upright and the quadruped. So you have your humans and your primates that fall into the first category predominantly. I'm not counting things like bears, which can walk on their hind legs, but generally speaking don't, or kangaroos, who are basically more hunched over. So this basically qualifies for creatures that ordinarily walk around left, right on their two legs. So I'm drawing out the silhouette for your basic human torso here. You have the back force coming in from the spine, upper spine, working its way into the stomach, which then works its way into the hips. Left, right, left. So that's what that looks like. And this applies to all that one category bipeds. Primates are going to be, other primates like orangutans or chimpanzees are going to have different proportions of this, but they're all going to follow that pattern, right, left, if they're facing to the right, right? So they're all going to have different variations of that shape, pretty much, as long as they're walking around primarily on two legs. Actually, I think chimpanzees kind of more or less might be an exception to that, but things like orangutans, I think, do. But like I said, case-by-case basis. So taking that first one there, that's like an average type of human. And now I'm going to extrapolate that to be more specific to, say, a heavyset character. And this is getting more into character design in terms of moving away from the broad and working into the specific, right? And it's going to work the same with more of a skinny character, and you'll see the curves are still there, but they're less pronounced, right? So you'll see the rhythms are going to be less pronounced in that as well. So moving on then to the quadruped basic. This is a generic kind of quadruped shape. It's going to kind of look like a seal. And seals are, like I said, seals are very good examples of this, right? Because they don't have very pronounced limbs, so you can really see the torso for what it is very clearly. But the same torso rhythms apply, right? So the difference here is that instead of coming down the back, now you have it coming down the sternum, right? The forces come down the sternum, work their way up into the back into the top of the hips, which would be like our back, our lower hips. If this were to continue to the right into the head, it would arch over the top of the back of the neck and down to the jaw, right? So, but this is just the torso for today, right? That's what we're dealing with. All quadrupeds are going to fall into this basic shape, as we'll see. So that's just for all quadrupeds. What if you want to get more specific now, right? So say like an elephant. Specifically, how does this apply to an elephant? So we have to distinguish an elephant from all other kinds of quadrupeds, right? So we look at an elephant and we realize that it has this very rectangular shape, but within that rectangle are the same two forces, right? The ones that sweeps down the sternum and goes back up into the hips. So, and it's going to make more of a boxy shape, but it's still there, right? It contains everything that the other one had in terms of its basic function, but its specificness in terms of its boxiness is changed in proportion. The front is much more heavy than the hips are in terms of the emphasis. like I said, it affects the shape too, the overall thumbprint of that creature. So, but let's take an opposite example too. Now let's look at the at a rabbit, for example, which is very far on the other end of the spectrum, right? Rabbits have a very tiny sternum area, rib cage, compared to the hind legs, which are the support the basically the back end, the hips. The hip part is much more pronounced, proportionally speaking, than the elephant is, right? And of course, this is disregarding overall scale, right? Just in terms of the thumbprint shape of a general rabbit. It's specific in that we're talking about one species now, as opposed to all quadrupeds, and this is what sets it apart, right? So we're gradually working into that sense of more specificness. And the next level of this, the next level of specificity, detail, I guess you'd call it, would be to impart character now, right? So if you've got this rabbit character, is it a thin rabbit? Is it a heavy rabbit? Is it basically we're getting into the very, whatever is most specific to that character now. So we'll see a more heavy set version here now. Working from the front, which I've pushed a little bit more out. And, generally with more heavyset characters, you see the shapes push out more. And as you'll see, I'll even work into the hindquarters a little bit more on that. Keep pushing at it, making it a little bit heavier in that sense, increasing the mass, but still keeping that overall relationship between the proportion of the front to the back and the overall relative position, I guess you could call it. So if you're having like a more traditional rabbit, not like Bugs Bunny, but like a more traditional looking rabbit character, it would still be more horizontal like that for the most part, although they do stand on their hind legs some. So then we start working into the example of the thin rabbit, right? So you had the general shape, and you had the heavy set, and now we're going to have the thin version of the same character, or the same species, sorry. As you can see, it's going to be much more lithe. I think lithe is a good word for that. So there you go. Smaller front, more pronounced hips and backside, but same proportions, relatively speaking, right? You can still build off of that and have it read as a rabbit. There's a more clear picture there. So maybe a rabbit that hasn't had quite so many carrots as the other one, right? So overall, we're looking at hierarchy, right? Two main kinds of torsirhythms based on bipedal and quadrupedal. Breaks down into species, and then again by individual physique. Heavy, lean, muscular, thin, what have you. And that's pretty much morphology. So that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more, click subscribe. Want to tell me what to draw? You can. Click on the link to my Patreon page.